Hello, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jessica Gulick, Commissioner of the U.S. Cyber Games Program. We are home to the U.S. Cyber Team and the U.S. Women's Cyber Team, traveling esport teams that compete internationally in cybersecurity competitions, both Jeopardy and Attack and Defense. On behalf of the Tortora Breda Institute, I'd like to welcome you to our roundtable discussion today, From the Arena to the C-Suite, How Sports Shape Women in Tech. TBI was created to promote collaboration across public and private sectors with a focus on business, culture, and diversity. We aim to reshape and develop collaboration and partnering practices to improve and secure practices and economies. A core concept of TBI is our think tank for partnerships in AI and cybersecurity. The think tank allows us to bring together experts and leaders from public and private sector and academia from around the world to reshape and develop collaboration and partnering practices while embracing the most critical technology growth. If you're not a member of the Institute, we invite you to our website to learn more and see how you can participate. Now, with no further ado, today we are celebrating the 2025 International Women's Day with a wonderful panel of professionals here that will be discussing how sports is really impacting women in tech. So ladies, if each of you would just provide a brief introduction of yourself, and why don't we start with Marnie Martin?
So first, it's great to be here with you all joining and also on this prestigious day, something we celebrate every year, but frankly, I view it as International Women's Day, 365 days of the year. It has been wonderful, my career in sports when I was younger, and then going into the tech world. I'm now on my third software CEO job. I'm very proud to be the CEO of Emburse Inc. We're leading the future of finance, and that's something that we can talk a little bit more about that. But again, really happy to be here on this panel.
Thank you, Marnie. Rika.
Hi there. Thank you. Thank you all for having me here today. My name is Reka Gunjal, and I lead the Information Security Strategy, Governance, and Oversight function at the NFL. I have been leading and building security programs, policy management, security awareness initiatives, and I'm very passionate about cybersecurity and for it to be accessible and actionable. So I'm excited to be here today, especially at an all-women sporting event. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Gabriella.
Hello, my name is Gabriella Cote, and first I want to say how I'm very excited to be here today and be a part of this conversation with such accomplished women. I'm a full-time vulnerability researcher and reverse engineer at Battelle, and I've been there for about 10 months. And then on top of that, I'm also part of the Season 4 US Cyber Team, which is the CTF team. I'm so excited to be here today.
Thank you. Shiloh.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shiloh Smiles. I work full-time as a penetration tester and red team operator. I also am a part-time student getting my master's in electrical engineering at George Mason University. Along with Gabriella, I'm also on the Season 4 US Cyber Team, and I'm also the captain of the Season 4 US Women's Cyber Team, which is a really cool initiative. Again, those are capture the flag teams. So again, also really excited to be here.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get started. In the spirit of how sports shape women in tech, I have a few questions for you, but I'm going to start with a couple of stats. In a 2023 Deloitte report, they shared that 75% of women who play competitive sports agree that girls who play competitive sports are more likely to be successful in their careers. In addition to that, 85% of those women surveyed who played sports say the skills they developed playing the sports were important to success in their professional careers. There were technical skills, but they were primarily the workforce skills, like you would see in terms of, facing adversity, teamwork, leadership, and communications. So that kind of as our backstage. Why don't we start off with the first question, which is how has being a part of a team, whether that is a sport team or a professional team, shaped your leadership skills and confidence? If you have kind of a use case or a memory that you want to share with us, who would like to start?
I can lead us off, I guess, and then we can go from there. So, I played sports that would be considered individual sports, team sports. I played, only team sports with women, team sports, and also practice against the guys, especially in the kind of more physical sports, etc. So I think you definitely learn confidence, you learn teamwork, you learn resiliency, and you also learn very on how to be competitive, but still within a team context, how you also can work through locker room disputes, but you still have the same goals to go win the game, win the championship, etc. So that definitely flowed very well into my professional career. When I started in the 90s, it was even more male dominated than it was today. I started in a lot in telco and defense use cases where cybersecurity, AI, these things we already started working with in the 90s, but it has spawned entire categories of software and other opportunities for women and men all around the world. I'll say that one of the things I brought into business beyond what we just talked about was that you're forming a team not only with the people that are, say, the starting players, you also have your practice teams, you have the wider teams, but it's the coaches, the training staffs, the people that in school, the sponsors, etc. And that team approach I've always brought into the companies that I lead, that it partners with the board, partners with sponsors or shareholders. Obviously, you have customers. And then that teamwork really goes into the people that not only report to me directly, but we form a team in all the companies I lead. And that's how we really excel and really change categories. It's definitely been interesting, the importance of cybersecurity. I worked also a lot in many emerging markets around the world, as well as developed markets, intelligence services. So all of us actually are in a war to defend cybersecurity, and it's definitely relevant, tying in the sports analogy and the cyber games. Cheering on all of you, Shiloh and Gabriella and your teams this year, but generally.
Fantastic. Would anybody else like to share?
Yeah, hey, it's Rika here. I want to also say, like, I echo a lot of those sentiments. So I think really skills and confidence takes you a long way. I think what I learned really early in my career was you got to trust your team. So you got to communicate clearly. It's very similar to playing sports, right? It's all about teamwork. It's about adapting quickly when things don't really go planned as how you have them planned. So I think being in a team environment has taught me a lot of leadership. It isn't just about having all the answers, but it's about coming together and we're as strong as we are um, as a team and really not individually. So confidence is something that you really need. You got to support one another. You got to make tough calls just like you do in sports. So whether it's responding to a security incident or is working on a long-term strategy, it's a team makes the difference.
Yeah, I'll hop in too. I just gotta say, I've been super lucky in my collegiate career and onwards to be able to be in technical leadership positions. And that was definitely a really, really good start for me. Learned so many leadership skills just by being in a position where, you are responsible for other people. Really forces you to adapt really quickly. And then specifically with these capture the flag teams, when you have kind of that virtual stage, you get a lot more of a diverse group just because it's so much more. There's a lower barrier to entry. It's the internet. All you need is an internet connection. So that's been really a blessing for me as far as my leadership skills go, to really get to connect and lead very diverse groups. And I'm talking all categories of diversity, which is it's really cool and interesting.
I'd also like to add, so when I think back to CTF teams that I played with in college, they were pretty small. It was like 2 to 5 people in a group usually, and I tend to surround myself with people, that I trust. So that was a great opportunity for me to grow in and learn with. So yeah, I also tend to naturally like sway towards leadership roles. So being in these groups allowed me to grow those skills in like a lower stakes environment versus like being the CEO of a company or like a director. So yeah.
Excellent. So one of my favorite sports growing up has always been basketball. And some of the lessons that I've learned from basketball that I took into my career would be understanding everybody's role on the team and allowing them to fully play that role. So trusting that they're going to be there in the position and they're going to make the shot, make the pass, whatever they need to do based on what we've discussed prior to. And that's worked out for me very well as throughout my career. And the second being, I love this from one of the coaches that I heard, is that's love your passes. And so I say that a lot on my team. And that is, it's not about the person who's receiving the pass that makes it a good pass. It's the person who's giving the pass. And so loving your passes and making sure we're handing off work to the next individual so that they are in a position for success. I'm curious, do any of you ladies have lessons that you've had from sports or game teams that really resonated in your career?
I don't want to always speak first, but if, so it's always, well, one, it's lovely to have a larger panel because you do get so much diversity of thought, right? And I think what you just mentioned, Jess, speaks to that, right? Like, I am very passionate about cybersecurity. I've led teams, but, I rely so much on people who are actually doing the work and frankly doing brilliant work that I wouldn't be able to do myself. So, when you talked about how you trust people to deliver what really is critical to our businesses, what critical to Emburse, the company I lead, as a software vendor, critical to our country's security, national security, whatever it is that's pertinent. You do have to build those teams that trust each other. And it doesn't mean that you don't have conflict. I actually think that conflict can be healthy, but it has to be with the foundation of trust, right? And that's where also I think the teams, you get the highest performing teams, are where there is not just diversity of, traditional aspects of diversity, but also the neurodiversity. And a lot of times how we view diversity brings that diversity of thought. But you still have to continue cultivating people to speak up, both to make the pass and to receive the pass. Because sometimes, you might know that someone is the best position to execute on the play that you're running, if we're speaking of basketball, but they might not actually see themselves as Michael Jordan wanting the ball in that last moment. So sometimes it is continuing to cultivate confidence in the context of trust. So I'll lead off with that and see where we go.
Yeah, kind of definitely what she said, kind of at the end there, like kind of leads into what I was going to say. But confidence was going to be my number one thing. Personally for me, like I am technically still kind of at an entry level in my career, about 3 years experience, but I'm starting to get to the point where, I'm able to take the initiative and take the lead on some efforts, and definitely having that the confidence in myself that I can do those things, um, as evidenced by the fact that I've done those things in the past, that I've succeeded on those, technical teams. In this case, the sport is my sport, but yeah, so definitely the confidence in that has really helped me in my career because I know that I can do it, and that's a big thing for me, is knowing that I can do hard things.
Excellent. So moving on to kind of personal experience and storytelling questions. In terms of, can you share a personal experience where teamwork specifically helped you overcome a challenge in your career? I can kind of start it off by saying I learned when I was starting a company that perseverance was something I had learned from sports, because when you play sports, some games you win, some games you don't. And being able to persevere and have people around you that can help pick up the ball when you're having a bad day really helped me get through and start building the business. How about you?
Absolutely. A moment stands out in my career when, my team had to respond and myself, we had to respond to a high pressure security incident. And I think the situation quickly evolved and there was no way just one person could have handled it alone. So I think we rely on each other's expertise. We communicate clearly. We make decisions under intense, times. that makes a big difference. It's about trust and collaboration.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to pick on Shiloh for a minute because Shiloh has a unique experience of being both on the US cyber team and on the all women's team. And so, what's the experience like? How is that different? Can you give us some kind of in comparison? Have you noticed anything that's slightly different between like a mixed team and a women's team? And then perhaps other folks can join in on what they might have seen in their own careers.
Definitely like the women's team because it's all women. I do hate to stereotype, but some things are true. Like it's a very supportive. Like everybody is very like we love to talk, we love to share stuff. Everyone's very supportive of each other. There's a huge amount of like that, girls supporting girls thing. Um, which like, we have some of that in the mixed team, but it's not really the energy so much as on the women's team. Um, which is really cool and fun. Um, and then the kind of personalities we have. So I will say there is a little bit of a difference in the two teams in that the blended team has more of like a winning goal, and the women's team we do a lot of outreach and we do a lot of community work. So there is a lot of focus there on people who can help with that. So the personalities we have on the women's team, I think, are a bit more outgoing and a bit more, kind of people, which is again cool. It definitely impacts the energy. And I think it's really cool that we kind of have that twofold mission on the women's team. It gives us a lot of creative energy to kind of bounce ideas of that kind of stuff. But it is definitely unique to see the differences between the two teams. But it's something I really enjoy.
I want to add to that as like an outside perspective. So I'm not part of the U.S. Women's team, but I'm part of the co-ed team. And we recently had like a cyber boot camp combining like both teams together. And I could like immediately see a difference between like the vibes of our team. I think the women's team had a different like sense of community and like friendship that really stood out to me. And I think it's because it was all women's and there was a lot of supportive energy.
Yeah, I actually want to echo all those things you're saying. So I've predominantly worked in the male dominant industry. I mean, I guess we all have, right? And this is, when I first came to the league, my team specifically was very heavy on the male gender. And so when I came and I started building my team, I think it was very important to start incorporating more women, just the different perspectives, right? So when you do compare, like, my side of the shop versus the other side of the shop, like, I think we in many cases our ideas flow just more freely than I think the other side does, right? Where we're not hesitating to ask questions. We feel like our voice matters, and we put in, all the ladies on my team really offer a lot of input, and it's really important because it's a perspective that's never been shared amongst the male side of the team. We definitely bring more creativity to the league, and which I feel like we are doing more outreach to the community. We go out to the schools. We're bringing. I think it's refreshing for the other side too, right? Because it's more of a, I don't know how to put it in other words, but it's refreshing. It's a different perspective, and it needs to be heard. So.
Well, I love that you asked this question and also the comments because, when I started my career, I had the same experience, playing women's sports. You have the community, right? And people in general are very supportive, and you have the sharing of ideas. And what was interesting, again, I'm a bit older than many of the other participants, starting my work career in the 90s, I had to adapt to what I called kind of a more male style of communication, right? And to be fair, I already was used to that. I grew up in agriculture, and it was very male dominated there too, and used to practicing and interacting with the male sports teams for more competition. But there was this perception that women wouldn't support women, and I think that partly was there was a quote that people quoted from Madeleine Albright. basically saying there's a special place in hell for women that don't support other women. But there was this perception that women didn't want to help women. And when you develop your capabilities and confidence, if you will, from sport, that's totally a falsehood, because you can only win together by helping other women. So what has delighted me is I think that falsehood over, the decades has pretty much gone away. And I think that the aspects of, women in general are more curious. And I think that's super important, not only in cybersecurity as we continue to be moved to more of a preemptive versus kind of red team reaction approach in cybersecurity, but also how we're cultivating the different views, innovation, like the thinking through what women bring to the table is super important. And and I love that with the both the co-ed and the female teams, you're showcasing women at the best of their abilities, right? Winning these games, showcasing how we get to the win, and also flying the flags in all women's team and proving that women absolutely are good at tech, they're good at cybersecurity. It's really exciting to see that we're proving that women are good at this, but we're still gaining the supportive culture and maintaining that I think actually has always been a part of female sports and really how women interact with each other.
I love that you brought that up, because I live that life too. I remember that quote and living it to some extent. My observation has been that it was probably driven by scarcity. What we've noticed is that bringing like all women cyber teams, right? The whole idea is to bring more women into cybersecurity and STEM careers. So I think in the early days when there was only one or two women in the room, it became more of a scarcity thing, right? They didn't feel like they could support each other because they were too busy surviving on their own, if that makes sense. But now with more women in the room, it's a lot more supportive because you get past the survival instinct and more start to collaborate and help each other out. Or at least that's my hope, is that as we increase the percentage of women in the room to a fair share, that it'll be way more collaborative. But I don't know if anybody else has any observations about that. I think some of the current numbers is women make up something like 25%. Is that what I heard recently from ISC Squared and Weiss's latest report on women in cyber, which is exciting. I know going to conferences, there's a line for the women's restroom now, which not so exciting, but it's a good sign. I've also noticed that there's quite a few women in leadership roles, in particular in cybersecurity, or running their own businesses. They seem to be taking on more of that collaboration and leadership. And I wonder if that has to do with a lot of what you all were sharing here on the panel. Any thoughts?
No, I think you're right. I think we do see more women in cyber, and it's really refreshing to see that. And I think really early exposure is huge. I think more of these programs and these scholarships or these fundings, more of these companies taking initiatives in these programs is really going to help. And it's really to keep women engaged and feeling like they belong in this category. So I think it's getting that first step in. We need to be at the table. We need to be engaging more in mentorships, more networking, more supportive environments, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, and I think a big thing too, historically, in all tech fields, really, I think almost all male dominated fields, a big part of the reason we have such an issue with percentages of women in the field is not necessarily getting them into the field, but staying. Because women, like, if you decide to have children, the chances that you come back to that field is very, very low. And it's something like the amount of women like studying engineering and studying cybersecurity, it's actually kind of getting pretty close to parity. But once you reach that mid-level, that's where you start losing women. And I do think that as a society, we've started to kind of catch on to that, and we started to, I see a lot more of a push for things like maternity leave, and pushing much more to be and to not necessarily view like taking maternity leave or taking some time off to care for kids as being such a detrimental thing. Like before, if you had a 3-year gap in your career because you decided to raise a toddler, that was career shattering. But now I think people are starting to respect that a lot more and see things like that as legitimate pursuits. And I think that's really important, and it really helps women, especially at those higher levels, who are seeking maybe more senior level C-suite positions, who do have obligations as wives or mothers and stuff, to not have to lose their career over it. And I think that is critical, and I definitely think that contributes a huge amount to the rise of women in cybersecurity, and in tech in general in those high level positions.
Fantastic. Oh, did somebody else? Okay.
I was going to add to that. So yeah, I agree with Shiloh. I definitely have seen like a rise in women in cybersecurity just from like computer science classes in college and now with CTFs and stuff. I don't know how it compares to industry, if it's like one to one. I really would love to see companies like make an effort, to employ and like seek out women, and yeah, try to like fix that gap in industry the way it's like increasing in schools and stuff.
Say cultivation. My first company I led at 27, and I think I was maybe on my own a bit of an independent trailblazer, right? So I was going to do what I was going to do regardless. But because I joined leadership very early in my career, I was able, for women both older and younger than me, actually, to make sure that we were keeping them in the workforce, that we tried to have less bias about working mothers, that we had a hybrid and a flexible working day when that really wasn't common. And what's interesting now is I think there is such a competition and shortage of talent that it does benefit women. And people need to keep high potential, talented women in the workforce. It's for their own benefit in companies and in boards and shareholders. And cybersecurity is no different from the broader aspects of tech in that regard. But you have to interact with women at different stages of their career, somewhat the same and somewhat differently, right? I'll say that, not all women will want to move into management. I think we seem to have a collection here of natural leaders, which is great. So then it's a question of, does leadership also equal people management? Sometimes that's a yes in tech, sometimes that's a no. So we've actually crafted career paths for people who want to lead other people and others who want to continue developing leadership skills more as an individual contributor or leading threat teams or, things like that. Getting women to take that first step into people management, it's almost as it needs as much attention as getting them to feel they'll be good in STEM, which I found out, right? And making it seem low enough risk that they actually recognize they're good at it. Because what's fascinating when I interact with a lot of women is that they really are super talented at what we're thinking of them to do in the next phase of their career. But they will have often less confidence that they have the skills to step into that next job. Shiloh, you even talked a little bit about it yourself. And that's where I think having either the support of obviously someone like me and in the companies I lead in mentorship, but that we need to grow out, right? And we need to really amplify that people will enable them, that they will have the supportive environment we all have talked about as they make the next step in their career and really drive that forward. Because that makes a huge difference, besides the flexibility of accommodating working mothers, to keeping women in the workforce in the middle management years and then beyond. Related to specifically getting more women to the C-suite, we're always going to be outliers unless you have more women that get even to VP level. I think at VP level is often when you start showcasing people leadership skills versus, say, individual leadership skills. So, I always track very much so kind of VP level demographics. And then from there, you can really cultivate and see the people that one, enjoy it, and two, have the ability to galvanize change and, more people as they scale up their own leadership journey.
It's fascinating. When we look at U.S. history, women's sports actually came around in 1970. So we're looking at probably quite a bit of the audience listening in There are a large group of women that never really had the opportunity to play sports in school. And it's not too late, I guess is what I would say, is that at US Cyber Games and Play Cyber, we believe in the mantra of learn to play, play to learn. This idea of learning how to play cyber games helps you play cyber games to learn important skills. And so I want to invite Gabriella and Shiloh to kind of share. Ladies, if you can give just a brief understanding of Capture the Flag for the audience that doesn't know it, and then talk about how some of those team activities in Capture the Flag have helped you in your career that you may not have gotten in academia alone. Does that make sense? Any thoughts?
I can describe CTFs. So I first started playing CTFs in 2020, and they were kind of my way to get or break into the security field. Like, I didn't know much about security before that, but it was a very easy and, well, not necessarily easy. Some parts of it are easy, but it was a quicker way to kind of understand all of the different realms of security. So there's different challenges and different categories that you can compete in. There's like web exploitation, reverse engineering, binary exploitation, forensics, and many more categories. And all it is like a quick challenge. Well, sometimes they're not quick, but it's a challenge that you have to solve, and you have to find like a vulnerability and possibly exploit it in order to get a flag. And once you get the flag, you get points. Like I said, for me, CTFs really were the reason that I learned where my passions lie within security. And then it also helped me collaborate with other people in my degree in college and now after I graduated, and identify where my passions lied and grow those skills.
Yeah, to echo Gabrielle a little bit. So, to clarify a bit more about like what capture the flags are, like she said, they're these kind of self-encapsulated challenges where you need to, using maybe a vulnerability or some kind of bad programming or something like that, you need to figure out how to acquire a flag. It's usually like a literal piece of text somewhere in the program. And then you turn it in for points essentially. So it can either be that, or there's these kind of standalone challenges, or it can be more of like a live fire range, usually called like attack defense or red versus blue. There's different formats, but essentially what they all have in common is that you are trying to get into a program or a system or something in order to get this flag and prove that you did so. And kind of again, like what Gabrielle said, me doing that in my collegiate career made me realize where my technical passion lied. That's where I learned that I loved offensive security, and that I was good at it, and that's what I wanted to do. One thing that I think is especially cool about CTFs is that for the most part, they are very deeply technical. You need to have a very strong understanding, like for example, for what Gabriella does, reverse engineering and vulnerability research slash binary exploitation, you need to have a very strong understanding of low level assembly constructs to succeed. Or with web exploitation, you need to have a very strong understanding of source code review. You need to be able to read pages and pages of code, often in different languages, and understand what it's actually doing in the back end to figure out how you can chain. Usually you're chaining 3 or 4 things together. You're chaining something messed up on the front page that you could put something in the database, which gets pulled by this other function and gets displayed over here. Um, so it's very, very technical. And I think this is especially important because you cited earlier the stat that like cybersecurity is about 25% women. Um, so when it comes to the specific subfields that are deeply technical, I've actually never seen research about it, but just from my personal experience, it's less than 10%.
I would agree.
In my office of maybe 30, there's 2 women.
Yep.
And that's pretty consistent. And while I love seeing so many women, maybe doing the less technical roles, still amazing women doing amazing things. I think it's super important to encourage women into these technical roles as well, because we can succeed there as well too. And I think CTFs are a really, really cool way to kind of get into that position. It really takes you from the ground up to learning deeply technical skills in a very fun way. I like games and I like winning, so that was like great for me personally.
No, I appreciate y'all sharing. I will say that they can be very technical, but some of the CTFs can be great for starting out as well. There are some entry level ones that are out there. I love the fact that there's a low barrier to entry for women. Sometimes no cost at all, just some time. And you can play as long or as short as you want from anywhere, which provides us a lot of flexibility because many women have a tight schedule, lots of things that they're trying to shuffle around, people they're taking care of, et cetera. And it still kind of gives them the skills and the micro badges they need to put onto their resume so they can say they've done it or talk about it in an interview. Perhaps I want to open up to Marnie and Enrica. I don't know if you play CTF or any other exercises or tech games of sorts like hackathons and such. But what has been some of your experience personally or what you've observed? Do you see women utilizing this to get some team experience as well?
You go first and I'll comment.
Yeah, no, I actually am not. I'm more on the strategic side and the business side. So, listening to these women talk about, their experience with these games is wonderful. And unfortunately, I can't add to this specific topic, but I also echo that the more women that get exposure to this, they probably don't even know that they have a skill set in this area and the more technical area. So yeah, the more we expose them to it, the more we'll see that we'll actually be having more talent than we realize that we do in these spaces. And it doesn't need to be male dominated.
I'm going to tell a little bit of a joke and then flow into your real question. So when I started my career in tech, again, this was back in the 90s, I probably would have earned more money being a welder in the Wyoming oil fields. Okay, just being funny, right? So it was only after like 27, I got my first leadership skill, etc. But I was really good at solving problems and puzzles, right? And I had companies that I started with an Excel spreadsheet that became 1 to 2, 3 billion in enterprise valuation, even in my 20s. So I didn't have the chance to capture the flag. Actually, that sounds super cool, but I will say that I was good at solving puzzles and finding solutions, and I would go as technical as I needed to go in my role. And it became a real differentiator that I understood enough details that I could scale companies faster, more profitably, whatever the case may be. When I first met you, Jess, actually through a mutual friend, what excited me is I actually want to change a lot of how we're trying to recruit women into STEM and specifically in cybersecurity. We do have some talented women here at Emburse. I'm very proud to say, both as deep technical experts as well as in management. And I think that we actually should take the capture the flag in these games, if we can, and in more accessible ways, into the games that, kids play starting in kindergarten, right? I think we could actually change education in dramatic ways, thinking about, how we have puzzles and thinking about the things that are age appropriate so that people learn that they're good and it's fun, etc. And like traditional gaming, you have different levels of difficulty and what have you. And as people grow in their career, they'll also see what their interests are and they'll become more and more expert. So for us at Emburse, we're looking at ways of partnering with the games. We're also looking at how we can drive more recruiting from people that are part of these programs, because I think it's like an apprenticeship for cybersecurity, even before you become in cybersecurity. And, you're leading by example how I think we can get more of this even into schools, elementary, middle school, high school programs over time.
I love it. I love it. One of the things that I would kind of add on to the discussion is academics, education provides a great basis for developing some technical skills. Where I've seen some of our cyber athletes like Shiloh and Gabriella really shine, particularly after a year of being on the team, is their ability to start honing, because they're playing games a lot, honing instinct and intuition. And those are two things you can't really teach from a traditional academic environment. Now, I say that kind of with caveats because many universities play CTFs and games and they bring those aspects into it. But the ability to, I just know watching Shiloh, for example, in Tokyo at Kanoichi Games, which was the women's all team games that we had in November, that they received second place on. But seeing her leadership under fire, right? Under a crisis environment, the pressure, everything is changing. I really got to see her bloom and really got to see her shine. And I can only imagine what that looks like in the workforce, right? So if we can bring that earlier into middle school and elementary to start teaching the pattern matching, to start teaching some of those, honing some of those instinctual skills on problem solving or being able to see, where the ball's going to be or anticipate where problems or risks are. I think that would be very advantageous to our marketplace as we go. Any thoughts on that?
On how to get more women in, is that the question?
Sure. Take it however you want.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'll kind of come off of the part about talking about like like you talk about the middle and high schoolers and stuff. And I think that's the best time to kind of target to try to get to push the women to kind of pursue this. That's really when you start to realize it. To be honest, like being so active in the capture the flag community, which is honestly like 95 to 98% male. A lot of these very, very intelligent, very capable guys, they usually started doing this in middle school or high school. Um, and one thing that I think really helps with that is having role models, or not even role models, but just seeing yourself in the people out there. Which is like, if you go up to any kindergartner right now and you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, the girls are going to say they want to be nurses and they want to be teachers and they want to be veterinarians, and the boys are going to want to be soldiers and policemen and astronauts, because that's what you see yourself as. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a teacher because that's where I saw women as teachers, which not a bad thing, absolutely nothing wrong with any of those fields. But if we want women to start off and start seeing this as a reality, they need to see that women are cybersecurity professionals, women are penetration testers, women are reverse engineers. um, and I think that just that visibility is incredibly important. And one thing that kind of a sub thought of that I think is very important is just it's kind of a numbers thing. Because while I think things like this are great, like you see people like Gabriella and and that's really great. Like these young women might see like, oh, that could be me in 10 years. Um, and that's great, but Gabrielle and I are the only two women on the US cyber team. We're in theory the best of the best, and not everybody is going to be the best of the best. So I think when we start to bump up the amount of women in there, women get to see that like you don't have to be exceptional to succeed. You don't have to get into cybersecurity and immediately be a prodigy and be a superstar. It's okay to be average. Like we need lots of okay people. Like there was a period 3 years ago, like I didn't know anything. I was such a beginner. I didn't know anything about, barely even knew how to play capture the flag. Um, and I think it's really important that young women know that it's okay to start this and think it's kind of cool and interesting and to just be kind of bad at it and to fail and to learn. And I think that's the number one way, because personally, myself getting into it with such a small pool of women in there, I felt so much pressure to be amazing, because if I failed, then that reflects badly on women. It doesn't just reflect badly on Shiloh. So I think the more women we get in there, the more it alleviates that pressure that they have to be amazing, and the less they feel like they need to quit if they don't succeed immediately. I think that's the number one thing, because I went to a military college already so small percent female, and then being in cybersecurity on top of that, when I would watch men versus women like dropping out, women dropped out at such a higher rate, even though they were performing, in my opinion. So I was a tutor, so I worked with a lot of the people that wanted to get better, and the women were more likely to come to tutoring. They were more likely to get better because of the tutoring, but at the end of the day, they were also more likely to drop out of the major. On Even though I would say the average women, if I took the average of all the male performance and the average of all the female performance, the women perform better, but they felt they were performing worse in comparison. So they were far more likely to drop out.
This is what I
And I
meant
see
about
that
support.
reflected.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is what I meant about support, because there'll be these inflection points when I think sometimes, and this can happen with anyone, but on average, I think it happens more with women, is that they're judging themselves harder than actually
Mhm.
what their performance is. So you have to kind of balance that. There's almost too much self-awareness in a way that equates to putting pressure when actually they're on a learning journey that's quite a solid and good learning journey. But that pressure there needs to be coaching that the pressure is helping them get better, and they're doing just fine, right? They're on the normal course of these things, or they're, on the high end of the normal course of these things. And, and if they continue, they'll end up being superstars. But they're definitely, I think you have the challenge in mid-career women, obviously, of childbearing, for those that want to have children and managing that. I think most workplaces are getting better about maternity leave, paternity leave, etc. But the inner pressure women put on, you do need to make sure that there's a valve for that, because otherwise there's so many women that are actually very good at it, but they don't think they're good at it, per Shiloh, your point. I'm curious, Gabrielle and Reka, did you feel that also?
I
Yeah,
definitely did.
100%. I feel like when I'm applying for a job or I'm setting to do a new initiative, I'll look at, what the ask is. Like, what are the bullet points that I need to complete in order to be successful? And if I don't hit every single mark, I might not apply for it. I might not raise my hand for it because I think I lack in a certain area. So, you don't have to know everything in order to, perform that task. If you know a little bit, or even have a good understanding of it, you can learn while you're on the job. And I think everyone here is absolutely right. Women are harder on themselves. They won't apply for that job just because they haven't met every single bullet point. And I think we need to encourage women to start applying for those jobs, to raise their hands for those, new initiatives, because I think they bring a lot more to the table than they actually think they do.
Yeah,
Confidence. Yeah.
I also want to add to that. So I started playing CTFs in 2020, and it was a very slow process for me, just because in the beginning I also felt that pressure that I had to be like perfect at what I was doing. I was like one of two or three women in a club of like 30 people. So I definitely felt the pressure, and especially with reverse engineering and binary exploitation, those are extremely technical categories to compete in. So for a while, I was kind of like, I can't do that unless I know everything about every single programming language, or how, everything in an operating system works. Like, if I didn't put that much pressure on myself from the beginning, I think I could have started these harder challenges and gone better a lot quicker. But it was a lot of like my internal monologue telling me that I can't start this until I'm like 100% ready and prepared. So
I've heard that so often, so often. Women will come up for advice after I've done a talk, and they're like, okay, Jessica, so I've done this, and this, and this, and I really want to be a leader, a project manager. So do you think I need to do these, 4 other things? And I'm like, no, I think you need to apply to be a project manager now. They're like, but I feel like I need to know everything before I get there. And I'm like, no, I think you need to learn when you get there. Just take the step, you know? Is I want to go back to Marnie. You said something at the beginning of our conversation that I super loved. And you were talking about sports and the fact that when you're an athlete on a team, particularly like, let's say a professional team, you're surrounded not just by your fellow athletes, but by your coaches, by the counselors, by the person who's helping you with your food and your stress and your social media. You have this entire tribe around you, right? Do you think this is something that women could do more in their professional careers?
Oh, absolutely. And, as I said, I think time limits my ability to do this more than desire, right? I mean, if I could, like, I don't know, clone or amplify myself, I would, because I'm so passionate about it that, it okay, if you're on a professional sports team, that's quite regimented if you actually interact with them. Like they're supposed to be in the gym and structured, it's very structured. So in business, actually, our life and how we can mentor and interact and even how we manage people is not typically as regimented as a professional athletes, right? But I think there's ways of thinking about how they build that support network. And then also, I always think about the best coaches, and that's even how I approach being CEO of companies. Like I am a coach to bring out the talent and to be putting the best team on the field. And by team, I mean team, like all the people that work for the company, how our customers come together, who are our shareholders, who's on our board, like, and that also fits very, very well with how the best professional teams build repeat dynasties. Okay, Kansas City didn't do so great in the Super Bowl, but overall what they've done since Mahomes has been there has been amazing. You look at also like these dominant college programs in women's sport, Caitlin Clark, rising up, and many, many other female athletes. So I think there's always lessons to learn. I always felt that also when I was studying the various maths and sciences, that often it's the intersection of things where you actually can unlock the most potential. And I definitely feel that alongside getting more women into the digital economy and getting more women into economic participation generally is what will drive the future of tech. It'll also drive the percentage of the digital economy and overall GDP, and it'll also continue to power our economies forward. So this really is essential. I think sometimes we have to make it more fun for women to not only be part of the cyber games, but, be in tech and frankly, general things. When we put pressure on ourselves, often it stops being fun. So I always try and keep a little bit of fun in it, because I think when the pressure overtakes the fun, then it's not as easy to continue learning either.
I like that. Pressure overtakes the fun. Don't let that happen. Any other thoughts in terms of, do you guys have personal practices that you surround yourself? I know personally, I try to create my own personal advisory board. So rather than having your traditional mentors, I have people that I go to on particular topics, particularly as being a CEO, right? That I can go talk to about finances, or I can go talk to about a staffing question, or how do I approach the market, or I've got this important meeting coming up. But I try to create my own advisory board around me. And that's what I try to share with folks. Do you guys have your own tools or practices in terms of, or have you thought about building that out further? Is that a new concept? I'm going to pick on the younger crowd here, Shiloh and Gabriella. Have you guys thought about? I mean, I know you guys have mentors, right? Is having a mentor effective for you?
Sorry, there's a jet flying over me right now.
Oh.
Maybe I can step in here. I think
Sure.
as women, we naturally build trusted circles. I think this is something we naturally do. So it's either in our professional lives or in our careers. So in cybersecurity, I think the same concept applies. Like if we have a network of trusted people that we can rely on or we can fall on when we have specific questions, I think it's very important. So I don't think it's the same as a mentorship, but it's a trusted circle. I have one that whenever I need some advice, I do go to, and I think together, if we build that within our day-to-day lives, I think it just brings a really good different perspectives in what we're doing, and it protects us, and we win. So I think it's important to have that trusted circle, and it's something that I rely heavily in my day-to-day.
Yeah, I think I get a little bit of a cop-out answer here because the U.S. women's cyber teams get a lot of that. It's really nice. It's really cool. Just kind of what Gabrielle and I talked about with CTFs being so like just some different categories you can do. So that's actually really cool because there are people on the team who I can teach a lot to who are beginners, but then we turn around and look at something else and they're way better than me and way smarter than me. And that goes beyond the U.S. Women's Cyber Team, but it is really cool, and it's a great community.
Yeah, I've definitely had to build my network of mentors as I started, as I joined the U.S. Cyber Team. There's people that I go to now that I know will be able to solve the super hard binary exploitation challenges, and reaching out to them and getting advice and help has been incredibly valuable. And then also, in my personal career, I recall in college, I had a group of, all women girl group in all my classes. And they went to the CTF club meetings with me, and they helped me do interview prep and mock interviews. And I attribute a lot of my success in college and getting my first job to having that network of women.
So I want to kind of transition now to more of the sports market and kind of some similarities between tech and sports market. And I'll start with Rika. Rika, you work with one of arguably the most recognized sports organizations in the world. What's it like being a woman working at the NFL?
Oh, I love it. I think it's really challenging. I think the energy there is really what gets me going. I predominantly came from the financial industry, so being in the sports industry just brings a different dynamic, a different sort of energy. So I enjoy it thoroughly. Every day is a different day. Nothing is the same, right? I just enjoy it, and then you put cybersecurity into it. I just enjoy it tenfold more. So I love it, and I want to be honest here. I was never athletic, being the younger version of myself. So, I listening to you ladies speak today, I see that having that backbone in sports and playing sports is very similar to running teams and being a part of an organization. That it's the same concepts. It's being a part of a team. It's your individual contribution, and we're stronger. Just being whole. So I think, yeah.
Excellent. Marty?
First off, I like football, right? So the NFL, we also have customers that are NFL teams, etc. And what's interesting is, obviously, Reiki, you're handling the NFL as an overall organization, but it was always super impressive to me when I'd go work with the CIO, CISOs in the given teams, how much technology and just the volume, not just of ticket sales, but merchandise sales. And, then you think about if there's betting and other games, and, it is a huge ecosystem, not just NFL, but when you combine all sports around the world. Cricket in India, I think, actually has some of the largest volumes of anything. So it's fascinating when you look at the scale of sports. This is why, when my mom, who was born in 1951, I was born in 1974, women in sports has been slower to move along. And even though we're making strides, and I remember when Title IX started and things like that, but if we think about the volume of sports and how we can actually keep pushing in women into that, not just say as coaches and players and what have you, but also in cybersecurity, it's a huge opportunity. And I said this, when I worked in China and Saudi and Japan and, everywhere else you can think of when I was still in my 20s and 30s, people cared more about those that were insightful, had good ideas, could bring forward something that was a problem to solve than whether it was a woman or a man, right? So definitely those were extreme male-dominated societies, but I always felt that the ideas and what I brought to the table was so important for them to hear, whether it was related to, again, making money, solving problems, whatever it was, that they were very happy to see me, okay? And that's where I think, sports is such big business that women have an opportunity to make a big contribution there. And similar to how we have an opportunity to get more female participation in STEM, as the female sports franchises specifically, yesterday I was at an event with the president of US Soccer, as those franchises become more valuable, et cetera, that is really a huge upside potential. I did another event with Ali Wagner, who actually is part of ownership group now of various soccer teams and others. So that'll be continuing to say lead from the front. And I think it all fits into how we have more young girls see themselves, not just as future cybersecurity professionals, future professional athletes, future CEOs, futures whatever they want. Okay. And I had that. My mom was a teacher. I remember her telling me that from a very young age, that I could be whatever I wanted to be. But this is how we have to continue showcasing it. And sports is a great way to showcase it alongside cybersecurity, which actually is much more accessible for women to become good at than they think. They can do it digitally. They can do it from anywhere in the world. And sports in many regards is the same way. Even if women probably won't play in the NFL because of the physical aspects, other than maybe certain positions, there's so many sports women can participate in, and that's how I think we have to build that expansive thinking, that view of taking on challenges and being part of this change, and frankly, every little girl and young woman that we can.
Excellent. So as we start to wrap up this discussion to the latter half, if you will, I want to open up the discussion points beyond just sports. So just generally speaking, increasing or encouraging or supporting more women in tech. What would you we'll start with what would you recommend to companies, academia, and allies? And then we'll go to the second part where what would you recommend to the women? Any advice, any tips, any things that you would like to see changed that you think would encourage more women to tech, that you would give to allies, companies, academia? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I would I just think like being a good ally, essentially. Like I something that really stuck with me is that one time like I was in a situation and we were in like a meeting and somebody asked me to take notes and there was a guy and he was like, "Hey guys, like it's a little bit weird that you guys asked the only girl to take notes and she's actually like the technical representative. Like there's several actual administrative assistants here." Um and that's just like one small example, but stuff like that, like there is a lot of pressures and weird things that women experience in the workplace. So just being aware of that and being willing to step up and be like, "Hey, like you aren't treating her fairly." Um, and there's a lot of debate to be had about, for example, like people always talk about that women, like maybe we aren't as assertive, and sometimes that can be why women don't get promoted as much and stuff like that. And that may or may not be true, but um, the fact of the matter is that women are less likely to get the promotions, are less likely to get paid as much as men. So whatever the reason for that is, just being aware of things like that and doing your best to make that stop being a thing, whether that be through working a little harder to reach out to the women to try to identify the root of the problem, but overall just being aware of the differences that women have and the things that we face in the workplace that men not, and just doing your best to get in front of them. That's probably the number one thing. Like I feel like if every person that I worked with was just aware of the things that I have to deal with as a woman in the workplace and actually took 5 minutes out of their day to like avoid perpetuating them, it would be night and day different. And I don't think it's that hard.
Any other thoughts? That's great.
Yeah, I agree with Shiloh. I think the first step is recognizing that there is a gender gap in tech and there is a need for diversity and not stepping away from that language because it's so important. And I think looking inward, like, and asking yourself, like, as a company or as an organization, like, how are you actively helping women to feel like they belong here? Um, and then creating those opportunities for women. Like maybe a company can start an all-female CTF team or join a women's organization or create a women's organization. Um, I think joining an organization that already exists is a very good first step because they're already doing the work and they've jumped through those hurdles. one of them is women in cybersecurity. It's a good one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. Rika?
I don't know. I'm echoing what everyone's saying. So making women a part of the decision making, making them inclusive, supporting them in the work environment is very important. So I think they really need to start creating more opportunities where fair hiring, a lot of the women said it, pay, making sure that the pay is equal, just making leadership development programs, I think tailored to women will be very helpful. We said it, encouraging mentorship, sponsorship, all these things really help women grow in the technology field. So even though men can be our very strong allies, just making that awareness that like our voices matter, just advocating for women, I think is very important.
It's always wonderful, I think, to also hear multi-generational views, right? Because, when I started my career, all the people on the board were men, obviously. That's not a surprise. We still have underrepresentation of women in boards, but none of their wives worked. So it wasn't just that all of the men were on boards. It was that all of their wives weren't working, right? So, and that still to some degree exists. So, I think everything that the other lady said, I agree with. But, we really have to change this perception of us as a society also fits us as a business. One of the words that I like, especially now, because, there's a variety of discussions on DEI right now, is what I say is that our customers of a software company I lead and generally in tech, our customers are very diverse. So therefore, our employees need to be diverse. Okay. And that's, I found a really good way of explaining it, that, we're not doing anything that's unnatural. We're just trying to duplicate our customers. And that includes how then we can talk about, education. I definitely grew up where, the pink jobs versus the blue jobs. I think that's a very outdated way of thinking. Men can be nurses and women can be cybersecurity engineers or whatever they want, right? So it goes both ways. And I think we have to let people cultivate what they're good at and start that early and go in. I think we do need more changes already in the education process pre-college, right? And then thinking about certifications, almost like we think about trades. I think that definitely applies to cyber roles, tech roles. And then we definitely do need kind of the allies and the awareness. I talked about that. I think most people want to do the right things now, and it's more of an awareness thing. But I also do feel that there has to be example set of zero tolerance. I think that there was a situation that happened that we actually had a lady come with her female partner to an event, and she got totally hazed, right? And, things like that just aren't acceptable, period. So, you have to have somebody at the top that just makes that super, super clear, whatever the example is. And that really does generally, culture gets started at the top, but you have to make sure it meets in the middle, I always say. And really make sure that you're cultivating allies throughout the organization who have the awareness, right? And that's something that even like, I try to find women in all C-suite jobs, actually. But, like as an example, a lot of the people I hired in are men here at Inverse as well. We do have a variety of women above average, but of course, some are men in my executive leadership team. But I make sure they're also allies. And I ask them, like, how are you cultivating women? How are you doing it through the organizations? What are the promotion paths? And I make sure that this is a part of all of our discussions, and I don't hire people that can't work that way, right? And that's something that really changes the culture from top to bottom. And then we have to do all the work that everyone's talked about to make sure that that we help, women into their first job, post academics, and then, continue along that career journey.
I love it. What I'm hearing from you all is value her. The difference that she brings is valuable. I'm hearing advocate for her. Understand where she's at and the challenges that she faces in the organization or the career, and appreciate those challenges and try to make it a little easier so that she can succeed. I'm hearing provide access to support groups from Gabriella. Enrica, I think you really kind of summed it all together to say, it's about doing all of this and creating that positive environment where women can really thrive. As we close out, I want to give each of you an opportunity to talk to the women that are listening in. As a successful woman in tech, what advice would you leave? What takeaway, what tip, what would be your final words that you would like to share? Who would like to start?
I can go first. I want to say cybersecurity, like sports, it's about confidence. It's about strategizing. It's about teamwork. So as a woman, you're already a leader in your day to day. You're a leader on the field. You're a leader in business. You're a leader in life. You make critical decisions. You adapt to pressure. You protect what matters most. And it's time that we own that space, even in the digital world. So not just as an end user or as a defender or as an innovator or as a leader, but empowering each other. We're fostering that trusted circle that we spoke about. We're advocating for one another. And we just create stronger environments when we come together as a team. Because we're women, we can lead in cybersecurity, and when we do, everyone wins.
That's beautiful. Who would like to follow that?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, just building off of that, but definitely finding like a community. Obviously we've talked about there's struggles and there's inequalities, but beyond all that stuff, there's talked about at the beginning, like the connections you get to make with your fellow women are beautiful. Like getting to meet Gabriella, getting to meet all the women on the women's team, like those are some of my like closest and most instant connections. And then like plenty of the guys too. Like honestly, they capture the flag community in particular just because it is such a high skill environment. I actually really haven't received any bad treatment because of my gender. It's the only reason I've been treated badly is because I'm bad at CTFs. That's a joke for the record. But you get treated like nobody cares that I'm a girl. They just care that I can solve the problem or not. So that's actually really cool. But I've made a lot of connections, like very supportive people, very helpful people. And that's definitely helped me kind of gain confidence and stay confident in my technical abilities in my career. So definitely finding that community, especially women, but allies too are imperative to have on your side.
Excellent. Gabriella.
Yeah. I think for me, the best piece of advice I have is to find a role model in your field that is successful. For me, like my role model is Maddie Stone. She was a security researcher at Google Project Zero, and she was the reason, she was the reason I got into security research. And I look up to her a lot. So I think finding a role model from the beginning and then also the community aspect is really important. Having a girl group.
Like, try and make it simple. I would, inside each woman and girl, say yes, okay? Because I'll tell you, this whole life is a learning journey, and even if you think that you're not good at it at the start, if you actually are the best learner, you will end up way better than anyone else who's not a good learner. But that first step, you have to say yes. So if I could, I don't know, get every woman and young girl to have more of a feeling of saying yes and going on that learning journey, that is really what I care about. And that's my advice to those listening right now, those listening on streaming, other follow-on events we do. Say yes, go on that learning journey.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you all. I really want to express my true appreciation for today's amazing panel. Really appreciate the insights that you shared, your perspective. It's very inspiring. even to me after so many years. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to share about your life and your journey with us and our audience. Thank you to our audience for joining us today, and we hope that you enjoyed this amazing discussion. Do help us spread the word and promote this webinar so we can reach even more women around the world with this message. Happy International Women's Day to all the women out there. Keep striving for greatness. To the women listening, if you are interested or curious about Capture the Flag or cyber games, we do have an event called Wicked 6 coming up, wicked6.com. Check it out. It'll be at the end of the month. We have 11 different platforms that you can participate on and just kind of play on, even if you've never played before. And if you're interested in learning more about the US Cyber Games, check us out at uscybergames.com. To learn more about TBI or become a member, you can visit their website at www.torabradA.org. Replays of today's panel will be available in a few days on both their website and the YouTube channel. Thank you all and have an amazing weekend.